Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to a special edition of Fantasy Fan Fellas. For all of our folks out there, it's been a minute. We haven't talked since the end of our Mistborn coverage. But as a quick reminder, I'm Hayden, executive producer of Fantasy Fangirls, co host of Fantasy Fan Fellas, and lover of all things Sanderson. And you guys, I am joined today by a very, very special guest, an honorary fella. I'm bestowing this official title upon you, Ben Grange. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to do a quick run through of where you might know Ben from already. Ben is a book publishing professional with nearly 15 years in the industry. He's the co-founder of Books on the Grange, a book development business he runs with his business partner, Lauren, who also happens to be his wife, where they have 30,000 followers across their social media channels. He's also the co-founder of 3030, a free global writing challenge where the goal is to write 30,000 words in 30 days. And if you're interested in that, we will put that in the description for you to check out. Ben is also a former literary agent and helped develop such books as the 2025 Prince Award winner Brownstone by Samuel Tier and the co-authored book Lux by Brandon Sanderson and Stephen Michael Bowles. That is quite the list, Ben. Thank you so much for being here. And I know that a lot of folks are going to be interested to hear your perspectives on this new Apple TV deal based on what you know from the publishing industry.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I actually had a conversation with Brandon Sanderson's literary agency last night, where they ran through all the details of the deal with me. So it was kind of fun coincidence that you invited me on the show, and they had a phone call with me last night, and it just worked out perfectly.
Yeah, so I met Ben at Dragonsteel Nexus in December. And the thing about Ben that you will learn if you get to know him at all is he just knows people. You'll meet up with him for an hour, and then the next hour will come up and be like, "Oh yeah, I was talking to this person," and you're like, "Hold on a second, what?" So Ben knows all the stuff, and so this is going to be super fun. Before we get into the nitty gritty details, I think it's a good idea for us to just kind of break down top line what we're going to be looking at here with this new deal. Essentially, if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard yet, Brandon has officially signed a deal with Apple TV to adapt the Cosmere for film and TV, reportedly starting with Mistborn as a feature film series, followed by the Stormlight archive as a TV series. Also, quickly, a spoiler warning. The first part of this conversation is going to be mostly spoiler free, but we'll wrap up things by sharing some of the things that we're most looking forward to seeing adapted for the screen. So we'll give a little spoiler warning when we get there. So, I mean, first of all, Ben, first blush, when you saw this announcement come, I mean, it's been feels like decades in the making at this point. Brandon has been hinting at this for a very, very long time. What was your reaction to the news?
I was, well, I shouldn't say I was shocked because I've kind of known behind the scenes things that have been happening for quite a while. When I first met Brandon, I took his class at BYU in 2014. And then during that class, I told him, I just walked up to him after class and I was like, "Hey, I want to work in book publishing. How do I do that?" He helped me get my first job in New York City. I worked for his literary agency for about a year and a half. And while I was at that literary agency, there was a pretty major deal at that time in the film industry where Sanderson sold the film rights to a different film production company for the Cosmere, and they worked on adapting the Stormlight archive for film. I was there when all of that happened, and everybody at the office was very excited about this happening. There were like talks of we can retire next year if this gets turned into a film, right? That's the level of excitement that was around that deal at the time. Things being what they are now, that didn't pan out. But I have been around the many sides of the industry. So I used to work at Amazon as well in the Kindle Direct Publishing department. And I had friends who worked at the Amazon Studios department. And while I was at Amazon, those people at the Amazon Studios department begged me to put them in touch with Brandon because they were desperate to talk with him about getting these film rights, or at least talking with him about them, because they had heard rumblings that places like Apple TV, for example, were interested in them in these rights all the way back in like 2021. So I shouldn't say that I'm too surprised that this is happening, but I'm very pleased to see that he inked this deal, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, and I mean, what's even more fascinating is how I don't know if I would say one of a kind this deal is, but how very rare this kind of deal is. Particularly the fact that Brandon is not only going to write, produce, and consult on all this, he's going to have a level of approvals that very few people have ever gotten with their IP before. So, it, with your experience in the publishing industry, could you kind of speak to how rare this kind of a deal is? And really how this is going to have a long-term ripple effect in how these shows and movies are produced.
I've never seen a deal like this before. Even the Hollywood Reporter post that was published yesterday stated that people like Rowling and Martin have not even had the same level of control over the series that have been adapted. It's kind of intense the way that they've structured this. And I think also based on the conversation I had last night with Sanderson's agency, the people at Apple TV seem very excited about moving forward with Brandon. They understand his vision for what the Cosmere is and as a literary universe, and they understand the delicacy and the tact that needs to be put into an adaptation of a literary universe of this scope and size. I also think that they have an understanding and a level of quality with the productions that they put on that is willing to go above and beyond to put something like this in place. So they're willing to say, Brandon, you can have control. Brandon, you
Yeah.
can have approvals. Brandon, you can help us write these scripts because we want the best possible product for our users, for our viewers, and we want your viewers, we want your audience to be happy ultimately with the product because we know that the fan reaction to this product is going to determine the longevity that we can experience with the Cosmere. They've seen franchises like The Rings of Power and like
Wheel of Time.
The Wheel of Time, for
Yeah.
example, that have been very uh, exciting projects over the last decade that have been all over the news media when it comes to fantasy, epic fantasy adaptations for the screen. And those have been mediocre at best. And fans have been disappointed at large. We've seen that with companies like Disney as well, with Star Wars, for example. There have been a ton of Star Wars IP films and TV shows put out over the past decade. And many of them, if not all of them, have been subpar.
Mhm.
And so we're existing in a landscape of epic fantasy and science fiction adaptations where we haven't really seen a whole lot of exceptional adaptations done over the last decade. I mean, in my opinion, and I'm probably forgetting some things, and people in the audience might yell at me for not remembering things that have come out over the last 10 years. But like my favorite adaptation over the last decade has probably been like season 1 of The Witcher. And outside of that, I haven't been too thrilled with like sci-fi fantasy films or TV lately.
I mean,
Um,
Severance might be the first thing that comes to mind, but that's not even necessarily adaptation of anything, really.
right. Um, so Apple is looking at this from a longevity perspective, in my opinion, as well. They're saying if we can get this right, if we can get this right, we know that the Cosmere is huge. And if we can make Mistborn into a smash hit movie, if we can turn Stormlight Archive into the number one streamed TV show on the internet, we will have a decade plus of content to develop in the Cosmere with Sanderson. And it'll be like the MCU of fantasy. So that is what I'm expecting their mindset is around this. And they're willing to give Sanderson some more control. They're willing to give him those approvals than they normally would for an adaptation. Partly because he's got such a massive following, partly because of the success that he's seen online over the last decade, but also because I think they are eyeing the future and are willing to make that investment. So I think it's a great overall like deal for both Sanderson and Apple to put something like really awesome together.
Well, and I think there's a few things that come into this. It's just like the state of streaming as a whole right now. One, Apple as a streamer is not really in the business of making money. It's never
Right.
really been about a bottom line for them. It's more about ubiquity and how they can keep integrating people into the Apple kind of ecosystem. And
Yeah.
so I think if they are able to execute this well and become and turn the Stormlight archive into the next Game of Thrones, for example, that's just another level of ubiquity that Apple will achieve. And the other thing here too is that streamers are not really looking to take risks on new stuff very often. They want to keep going back to the IP well as much as possible. Look at what's happening now with Game of Thrones. So they're saying, okay, if we can do Mistborn well, if we can do Stormlight Archive well, we can do Tress of the Emerald Sea. We can do Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. We can do Warbreaker. We can keep going back to the Sanderson well for the rest of time, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a really interesting deal, not just from Sanderson's side, but I think it's a really big indication of where Apple's head is right now in the streaming world.
Yeah, that's all so true. Like you brought up, the Apple's not necessarily in the money making business for this. That's how like a lot of tech giants are when it comes to their streaming services.
Amazon is similar, yeah.
Amazon 100% is not in the business of making money on Prime. I mean, you sign up for Prime, you automatically get access to all of their TV shows and movies. That's exactly how they treated their adaptations of The Wheel of Time and the Rings of Power, for example. But I think they also had a motivation of trying to just sell you stuff while you were on their platform that Apple doesn't have, right? You already have your iPhone, you already have your iPad, your MacBook that you're watching and streaming this on. So yes, that's all very true.
It would have been fascinating to see if it was on Amazon to see a little pop-up to say like, buy your replica of Oathbringer after the show is over. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I honestly, like, I'm so glad that it's not on Amazon.
Yeah.
Just the quality of production that they've put out for the last couple of years is not my favorite. And I'm glad that it's going to be on Apple.
Yeah. So I'm curious too if you think this was a part of Apple's thought process during the deal. Is Sanderson's with how prolific Sanderson is and the way he has been able to churn out stuff so quickly with still a high level of quality, do you think that that was a plus in the Sanderson column for Apple when negotiating this deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, if anybody with a business mindset who looks at Brandon thinks, how can we tap into this? Because not only does he write phenomenally, he's got an exceptional storytelling voice. People love his stories. He approaches the business of his literary universe so uniquely. Nobody else in the literary space really treats their intellectual property the way that Brandon treats his intellectual property. I don't know any other. I've worked with so many big time authors, so many top authors who sell tens of millions of books, and they have maybe 2 employees working for them, managing their day to day, managing their calendar, getting their groceries for them. Brandon employs 75 plus people in Utah. And people look at that and they say, this is a guy that understands people. He understands quality. He understands business. He knows that if he puts out something excellent, that people are going to go to him and purchase it. And I think Apple saw that. Apple sees that. Everybody sees that. And they say, this is somebody we want to be doing business with. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's such a low risk partner too. I mean, he's the things that he espouses in his books. He's just a nice guy in general, very down to earth. Yeah. And then on top of that, when he tells you he's going to deliver something, he delivers it. I saw some pictures online today that he updated the kind of like weekly update tracker on his website for the Mistborn movie script is at 2%. So he's already gotten started on the script. So that's super exciting. So I guess now that we've kind of talked about a little bit of the deal. Is there anything else that you were able to glean from your conversation with his agents that maybe kind of, put a little light bulb in your head?
This was a pretty standard call. Like we just had a quick chat about the deal. Pretty much what's out there is what's out there, and that's pretty much all they could share. But something that was kind of interesting on the phone call is that if you read the Hollywood Reporter post about this deal, they claim that the rights to the Cosmere have been sold to Apple TV, and that's not technically the case. They wanted me to make sure that I corrected this on the record, saying that only the rights to the Mistborn and Stormlight Archive stories have been sold to Apple TV.
Okay.
So we don't have a full Cosmere deal with Apple TV. We have a Mistborn deal, we have a Stormlight Archive deal, and that includes all of the books that are in those series. So we've got the main trilogy, the main trilogy for Mistborn. We have
Yeah.
the published books for Mistborn. We have the novellas. Then we also
Yeah.
have the 5 current books for Stormlight Archive, the future books for the Stormlight Archive, and the novellas in that series as well. So
Yeah.
we don't have a full Cosmere
Yeah.
TV deal. It is
Which is
just
interesting because that's how it's been characterized by basically everybody on social media to this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, if that's what the Hollywood Reporter and other magazines online are going to be reporting about, that's what people are going
Yeah.
to be talking about. So,
Yeah.
you have the first opportunity to set the record straight.
Don't worry, I will. So
Actually,
I'm curious.
I think another publication, Tor.com, which is now Reactor Mag, also has corrected
Gotcha.
the record.
So I'm curious about in terms of the decision to not make this a full-scale Cosmere deal. Obviously, makes some level of sense from a business perspective on Brandon's side, just to hedge to say, well, if things with Mistborn and Stormlight don't go the way that I hope they would, I could go somewhere else. But I also wonder if it's keeping his options open for different kinds of adaptations for other books. Something like if he wanted to do an animated Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, if he could shop that around to a different partner as well.
It might be. I know that the agency that Brandon works with, a Jabberwocky Literary Agency, they've got a person that works there that's their only job is to shop sub rights around to other
Oh,
companies.
wow. Okay.
And so they go and they shop film rights, they shop merchandising rights. Like before Sanderson was a big deal, they inked deals with places like Badali Jewelry,
Yeah.
and that is a jewelry making company that if you go to Dragonsteel Nexus, you'll see their booth. They sell Cosmere and Dragonsteel related necklaces and rings and things at these conventions. And so this person's job is to go out and find those sub rights deals that they can make for all of the clients at the agency. But Brandon is one of the most popular, if not the most popular author at that agency. And so they also look for things like video game rights. And it wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprising to me if Brandon was like, this is all hypothetical. This is not something from the conversation that we had last night. But for example, if Brandon is eyeing a video game deal for like Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, for example, with a different production company, then he probably wouldn't have been able to sell those film rights and merchandising rights and video game rights to Apple TV, for example. So that's possible that is in play here.
Yeah. It's more about flexibility in general, it seems like, if we had to guess.
Yeah.
So I'm curious now. I remember that you had mentioned that there was another deal that was in place while you were up in the, his publishing agency.
Mhm.
I think I remember Brandon saying at some point there is a kind of cool down period whenever you have sign a deal with one studio. There's a certain amount of time until your rights get reverted back to you. Do you have any insight for that at least that you saw while you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, when an author sublets their rights to a film production company for film production, they will ink a deal that is it's what we call a film option. And the film option typically has a period of like 12, 18, or 24 months. That's like standard film option length. So if you go to Apple TV and you sell them your film rights, they will have the option to produce that film for the next 12 to 24 months, for example. If they don't execute the option on that film deal, then after that 24 months expires, the rights will simply just revert automatically back to the author unless the production company decides to fork over some more money and re-up the option.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, before we move on into our spoiler section of the discussion, I think it's time for a little bit of speculation. So, you might have a little bit more experience in this kind of timeline stuff than I do, but we know that hypothetically, they're going to start with Mistborn: The Final Empire as the first film. Um, when do you think we could start to expect to hear real news about this, whether it be casting or directing, stuff like that? Do you have a guess?
Yeah, I mean, so we know that Brandon is spending the next 5 to 6 months working on the Mistborn script.
Right. Yeah.
Before they cast anybody, likely before they
Yeah.
cast anybody, they're going to need the script. They're gonna need
Yep.
to find they're gonna need at least, like, the first draft, second
Yeah.
draft of the script, and they're gonna work on that with the writing team, not just Brandon, but, like, the whole writing team that they're gonna select for these shows. And so they need to know who these characters are gonna sound like on the page, on the screen, before they can go out and look for people. They might try to do some preemptive work there before the script is fully written,
Or
but
they're having conversations. They're thinking about it at least.
that's really only if they're like, we're gonna get started on this right away.
Sure.
Uh, so it's all up in the air. We don't know any details as far as the purchase of these film rights. So I talked about this in a video I made a couple of days ago. Maybe it was yesterday. So if a film production company greenlights a film after they've optioned the film rights from an author, they will undergo what's called the purchase price, or the purchase of the full rights of the intellectual property in that book. And at that time, the author will get all the money in that deal, and they will start the pre-production and like beginning production work for that TV show or that movie, like the principal photography. They'll start like initially shooting that right when
Sure.
they execute that purchase price. So um we are likely in the stages right now of the book has been optioned, or I guess the 2 books series have been optioned. We're waiting to see if the company's going to green light the films. And
Yep.
I mean, based on the conversations that I've had with the agents and with just people in the industry, this is Apple is very excited about
Yeah.
doing this with Brandon. They're probably trying to do everything that they can behind the scenes to make sure this works. But even still, we probably won't be seeing any details about this until after the studio has greenlit the film or the TV show for pre-production and principal photography. So, my guess would be like 6 months to a year from now, we will probably know a little bit more than we know right now.
I'm going to give you a date for the premiere of Mistborn. I'm going to say July 2028 is going to be when the first movie comes out.
So we've got 2.5 years. That's honestly, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. I think they're going to want to make it a summer blockbuster and really, really push this thing into the consciousness.
That would be super cool. I mean, it would take a monumental effort to get us there from where we are right now. We have
who we're talking about, right? It's Brandon.
So yeah, yes. Brandon is one person, but if you go to the very end of a movie, there are typically like 4,000 names that scroll at the end, right? So they've got to hire a lot of people. They've got to get a lot of people on board. They've got to get, they've got to get the directors. They've got to get the writing team put together. And this is all before they even start shooting the film. So yeah, with how long films and TV shows in today's market take to put out.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the golden era of TV and film, like early 2000s. We were getting a new Harry Potter movie every year, basically, right? And then Harry Potter ends, and a couple of years later, we get Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones starts coming out every year. And it's like you just produced 10 episodes that are all each an hour long, and you produced that in a year from the last time we had the previous season of the Game of Thrones. And so we're looking at now companies are like, well, maybe we're going to take 2 years to put out the
Yep.
next season of this TV show. Maybe we're going to take 2.5 years to do this next season of this TV show. And I kind of want, I wish we could go back to that golden era of just like, okay, we've got Stormlight season 1 that's coming out in, let's say we give the same time frame if we are being generous, July 2028. Maybe it's July 2029, for example.
Yeah.
Every year after that, I would love to see a new season of Stormlight Archive.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love that. I don't know if we'll get that, but that would be fantastic.
Well, and I mean, another kind of part of what you're talking about, the economics of it are just so much more different now. I mean, it is so expensive to produce these major shows and films now, which makes Apple TV such a great partner for Brandon to work with again, because money is not an issue here. I'm curious, something that I've heard as speculation, well, not even speculation, just a wish that people have talked about online is when Percy Jackson adapted the Lord of the Rings films, they filmed all of that back to back to back all at once so that they could kind of streamline the production. What's that?
I'm going to correct you. It's Peter Jackson.
Oh my God,
Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson. Okay, cool.
Keep going.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So when Peter Jackson was producing that, they filmed it back to back to back. So it was able to streamline that production process. I'd be really curious to see if that is something that they consider, one, to work around schedules more easily, maybe even make production costs a little bit more manageable. And then 3, Mistborn happens over the first trilogy happens over the course of really like a year or so. And so, keeping someone like Ben, who is supposed to be this young teenager, kind of keeping that same vibe all the way through and not letting the actress age too much. So I'm curious if that's something. I would doubt that you got any indication of that from the agents, but I think that's an interesting idea.
Honestly, if that happens, it would be a discussion that's a budget discussion, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to talk about that with anybody outside of the process. So, the first person we would probably hear that from would probably be Brandon himself announcing that on like an update that he does on his YouTube channel or something like that. But that decision would come after the green light stage, or like that announcement would come after the green light stage. And we would learn more about that at that point. But I don't think that's going to happen, honestly. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, these, like you said, producing films and TV shows is now more expensive than ever before. The life is more expensive than ever before, but also epic fantasy and sci-fi films have always been the most expensive things to adapt into film because of just the level of the scope of the worlds that they're adapting, the level of computer graphics that they have to pump into these shows to make them look realistic. It's just on a different level than something like Bridgerton, for example. That is going to be much less expensive to put together.
Yeah. I also can't help but wonder too, in the Hollywood Reporter press release, they mentioned Mistborn first and Stormlight Archive second. I really, really hope we start to get Stormlight Archive before all of the Mistborn movies are released. I'm hesitant to speculate, but
I think we will probably, if they do move forward with this, I think we'll probably start to see them simultaneously, because Mistborn is going to be a film.
Yeah.
It's going to be a one-off film that will be maybe 2.5 hours. If you want to push 3 hours, you probably could with Mistborn. But that's, if you're thinking about it, that's 3 episodes of a Stormlight Archive series, right? Stormlight Archive is going to be, I would be very interested to talk with the producers about what they're planning for.
Yeah.
I do know that Brandon is also writing the initial script for Stormlight Archive. He mentioned that he's writing the Mistborn one. I don't think he mentioned that he's writing Stormlight, but I did get confirmation last night that he is also working on that one as well.
Currently working on it.
Probably not currently writing
Oh,
it.
but he will be writing it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
but if you think about it, that's just Mistborn will be a one-off release, and
Yeah.
then they'll probably try to release the next one within a year. But
Right.
Stormlight Archive will be something that they can sustain long term. Uh,
Yeah.
if they decide to do 15 episodes, for example, which I think book one would warrant 15 episodes, right? If you're thinking about other adaptations that are on TV right now, if Percy Jackson is getting, we're talking about real Percy Jackson
Peter
here.
Jackson. Sorry, Ben. Peter Jackson.
If the Percy Jackson adaptation on Disney Plus has 8 episodes and
Yeah.
those books are 250 pages long, Stormlight Archive, which is 1,100 pages long, warrants 15 episodes. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it does. It does. And I would
Yeah.
love to see that.
Wow. I do not envy Brandon for having to adapt these. Like, because I mean, the wonderful thing about the Stormlight Archive books is it feels like everything that could be in there is basically in there. And that's just not how adaptations work. And so I wouldn't know really where to begin with putting things on the cutting room floor.
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting conversation to have because Brandon is going to be working on these scripts. He's
Yep.
writing the first one for Mistborn. He will be working on the Stormlight Archive script. And he's talked about multiple times about um, where film adaptations go right and where they go wrong. And he's very specific about what they do wrong a lot of the time is trying to fit too much in from the book and not cutting enough or changing enough from the book to the film. So I would expect, even though Brandon is writing these scripts, we will see some changes from the
Mhm.
source material to the screen. It just has to be done in
Yeah.
order, in a lot of cases, in order to make it work on screen. What works on the page does not always work on the screen. And I think that's something that Brandon understands and has talked about before. So I do have like a high level of confidence in he's not a script writer, he's a novelist.
Yeah.
But even still, he understands that one basic truth that you need to change things from book to film to make the in order to make the book fit on the screen. And so we should see some changes. They're not going to be like canonical changes
Right.
within the universe with Brandon writing it and giving approvals, but things that are, less important to the overall universe of the Cosmere. He'll probably see a fair bit of adaptation and change in order to make it work on the screen.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if a lot of those hard decisions are made around lore and putting actual lore devices on the screen versus because for me, I think of these adaptations with some exceptions, it becomes much more of a plot driven art form, right? Whereas the Stormlight Archive lore is almost equally as important as the plot itself in my mind. So for me, I'm just curious if he's going to have conversations with the team and himself about what is the average viewer's appetite for heavy lore in this kind of adaptation, because he could go the direction where, it would make people like you and me really happy and we get every single bit of lore in this, but he also has to consider somebody who's discovering his work through this medium.
Honestly, this is a great conversation. Really great conversation to have because if you read Mistborn, for example, or if
Yeah.
you read the Stormlight Archive, you're not going to get a ton of lore just from one novel. The
Yeah.
lore of the Cosmere is spread across multiple
Yeah.
novels. And so, like I said, like Apple understands the depth of the Cosmere. And so they want this to last for the next 15 years. And if we see 25 adaptations over the next 25 years or so from Apple in the Cosmere, we'll get a whole picture of what the Cosmere looks like on screen, but we probably won't be seeing a lot of the intricacies of the spiritual realm versus the cognitive realm in a Mistborn adaptation
Yeah.
because Brandon understands that although this epic fantasy universe is based on the death of Aiden Alcium, he also understands that Mistborn is about Vin and Kelsier and Elend, who are people living on a planet that has a lot of bad stuff going on.
Issues.
And yeah, a lot of issues. Um, and it's about them. Like that Mistborn is about those characters. It is not about the Cosmere. the backdrop is the Cosmere, but it's about the characters. And Brandon
Yeah.
understands that very specifically about the worlds that he builds, is that it's about these people.
Yeah.
And so we're probably going to see a lot of human elements to these stories that I think Brandon does an exceptional job of in his prose, of bringing us the human element of his characters. And that is what I'm most excited to see in these shows. Not Vin shooting a coin off into the distance and pushing herself off of it onto the tip of a building. That will look really cool. I'm excited to see her grappling with her personality, which is and her character flaws and her
Belonging. Yeah.
of being abandoned by
Yep.
everybody
Yeah.
that has ever loved her, right? That is going to be a very important part of this film adaptation. And I can't wait to see that in the backdrop of Luthadel.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we should just pop the cork now and say spoilers are about to be coming, because the question I want to ask you now is, so yeah, okay. If you have not read the full first Mistborn trilogy and the Stormlight archive, sorry folks, but I think it's time for you to leave. Because
Or like, what are you doing?
yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah. So as soon as you said spiritual realm and cognitive realm, I was like, okay, yeah, we need to start
Spoilers. Yeah.
yeah. So this conversation has made me wonder what is going to be the most difficult book to adapt. Because to me, I think Wind and Truth is far and away going to be the most difficult, just with the sheer amount of things that are going on and the this might sound like a loaded word, but the esoteric nature of all the lore that is filled that fills that book. What do you think about that?
This is a great question. Which one's going to be the most difficult to adapt? I can see how that would be very difficult to do, because you've got such new settings that you will not have seen throughout Mistborn and all of Stormlight up to this point. So that will be maybe difficult, but I think it won't be super difficult. In my opinion, it won't be super difficult, because for the most part, we have the physical realm, which will already be established.
Yep.
We have the cognitive realm, Shadesmar, which
Yeah.
will already be established at that point
Yeah.
over multiple seasons. And so really it's just the introduction of the spiritual realm and like their depth into that world. So that's going to be the new thing, but I don't know if that's going to be a hard thing for them to do, because they'll be able to build off of the success they see in both of the other realms that they construct.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what those look like. And
I know.
yeah. But if they nail the physical realm of Roshar, and
Yeah.
if they nail the cognitive realm that is the mirror of Roshar, then they're probably also going to nail the spiritual realm and what that looks like.
Yeah.
In terms of here, let me take it a step farther.
Okay.
Who is going to be the hardest character to cast for this whole process?
Oh,
I already have a character in mind.
all right. Why don't you go first? I'm going to think on this as you go.
Okay. I will say it's probably going to be Hoyd.
Oh, I know exactly who they need to go with. Can I share you who my dream cast is?
Yeah, share your fan pick.
It's Alan Cumming. It has to be Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming. Who I'm showing my stripes here. I'm not a huge like actor name person.
Do you watch The Traitors on Peacock?
I don't watch a lot of TV, so
okay. Hold on. I'm going to find like the perfect representation. Hold on. This is perfect. Okay. Let's see. Share screen. Share screen.
There my God. Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I know Alan Cumming. Okay.
Yeah, we've got Alan Cumming right here. Can anybody see it?
That's a perfect face. Yeah.
Dude, he's so he even played the MC in Cabaret on it was either Broadway or the West End. So I could just see him being absolutely perfect for Hoyd. But it's so, to your point though, it's perhaps the most essential person to get right.
It is. Across all of the Cosmere books that are going to be adapted, he's going to be in the most of these adaptations. He will be the face you see the most. He is going to be the Nick Fury of the Cosmere adaptation on the screen. Like he's going to be in every movie, right? In every TV show. And he's going to be like, he's going to be that character or that actor that pulls it all together.
Yeah.
That if they nail it, if they nail Hoyd with their casting and with his performance, then we will have so many Cosmere adaptations. That's
Yeah.
what I'm gonna call right here, because he's obviously not going to be carrying the shows. He's obviously not going to be carrying the plot,
Yeah.
but he will be in the backdrop of every single movie, and he will be like almost like the heartbeat that
Yeah.
is pushing these characters to achieve great heights. And so, I mean, honestly, Hoyd.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I have 2 options here. I think Kaladin and Shallan are going to be really, really important, and I think there is a level of difficulty here. One, for Kaladin, I do think that there needs to be a level of nuance. Like, for example, I believe Brandon has talked before about writing Sazed in Hero of Ages was pretty difficult for him because writing someone who was depressed could be a different experience for the reader. And I think as Kaladin is just someone who is so emblematic of the entire Stormlight archive and is the person that you just gravitate to from an emotional perspective, having that person on the screen and faithfully portraying depression and all those PTSD and all those different things while also making it someone who is magnetic, I think is going to be a interesting needle for them to thread. I also think with Shallan, I think there's some really weird feelings that people have about Shallan in the book, and she gets a lot of flack, and some people are like, oh, I wish I could just skip the Shallan chapters. And she is a very nuanced character. So I think that there is a level of they have to get that casting right so that the actual intent of the character of Shallan can come through in the right way.
I agree. I mean, those are all very important castings. I mean, Vin and Kelsey are going to be
Yeah.
huge for Mistborn, um, Shallan and Kaladin, especially because in book one, Wave Kings, Kaladin is the main character of that
Yeah.
book. We get
Yeah.
his perspective, we get his backstory in that book. And we also see a lot of Shallan throughout that book as well. She's kind of set up as the next main character almost. And we kind of expect that book two is going to be her backstory, which we get
Yep. Yep.
eventually. Um, but those are going to be
Yeah.
very important characters to cast. Honestly, the main cast of characters is going to be huge.
Of
But
course.
I so hope that we can move away from um acting as a how do I put this? I've seen several shows lately and movies where the actors feel less than genuine on the screen.
Mhm.
And I want to watch a movie where it feels like they are that person, where it doesn't feel like they are acting, but they are putting on a performance of making me believe that they are that character. I want to see somebody who can make me believe that they are Kaladin, who can
Yeah.
make me believe that they are Shallan, right? And I just hope that the casting goes well here. Because
Yeah.
the right people can make this.
Oh,
The right chemistry on the screen can make this. So those are in my opinion, that's going to be harder than adapting the visuals of maybe
yeah.
what the worlds are going to look like. I have a lot of faith in the artists of our day and the renderings that they can put on the screen for us. What I haven't seen a lot of is phenomenal actors um, who can make me believe that I'm in that world. I want to see the depth of character that Sir Ian McKellen brings to the screen every single performance that he's in, right? That's what I want to see
Yeah.
so badly.
Yeah. It's a challenge too because something like a Harry Potter when it started to be adapted into films, I believe by that time there were 3 books out at the time or something like that. Whereas with these, in the case of Mistborn, the first trilogy, it's over. In the case of Stormlight Archive,
Yeah.
this has been out since, I mean, when was the first one? Was it 2012?
For Mistborn? Or
Sorry,
for
for the
Way of
Stormlight
Kings.
Archive. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Stormlight Archive came out in 2011.
Yeah. So, I mean, people have been building these characters and
Nope,
that image
2010.
of
I
them.
think it's 2010. Yeah.
2010. Yeah, that sounds right. But people have been building the image of these characters, especially the diehard fans, for a decade and a half at least. So people have
Mhm.
very strong ideas of what these characters should look and sound and be like. So it is such a challenge to cast this moving forward for sure.
Yeah, it
So I'm
definitely will
curious.
be.
Yeah, I'm curious, Ben. Now that we talked about some of the characters, I would like to know some of the scenes or moments that you are most looking forward to seeing adapted in the first Mistborn trilogy and or the Stormlight Archive.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the Stormlight Archive.
Okay,
My favorite book in the Stormlight Archive is Words of Radiance.
same.
It is my number one favorite book. And I cannot wait for Honor is Dead, but I will see what I
Oh
can do.
my god.
That is going to hit so hard. I cannot wait for that scene. Honestly, I can't wait for that whole season. Just
Oh,
um just like diving into I love Shalon's character, by the way. I know a lot,
yeah.
like you mentioned, lots of people have a nuanced approach to Shalon's character. I think she's a phenomenally written character. I love the backstory that she has. I love the secrets that she keeps. I can't wait to see all of that unfold
Oh
on the
yeah.
screen. I can't wait to see the rivalry between um Adolin and Kaladin on the screen. I cannot wait to see this. I can't wait to see Kaladin take on a freaking chasm fiend,
Yeah.
seemingly by himself. Obviously,
Yeah.
Shalon helps. But there's so much good stuff in
Oh my
that
god.
book. So much good stuff in that book.
The battle with Zeth at the end. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
the battle with Seth. Yeah, and then
I
you get to
claim
the
the
end.
sky. Like, please.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't even gotten to the climax yet. Just like all of those individual just story defining
Yeah.
scenes that lead up to the very end of the story where Kaladin claims the skies.
Yeah.
Though that is, I'm just getting chills.
Oh.
Holy crap.
So
I can't wait for that. That is going to be so cool.
yeah. Yeah. I think like so I'm just gonna rattle some off. First thing that comes to mind for me is some of the Way of Kings moments. One that's quieter is Kaladin at the Honor Chasm. And when Syl brings him that poison leaf, I mean, Syl and Kaladin, that's a really important dynamic that they need to get right. Actually, going back to that other point.
Yeah.
But I think we'll learn a lot about who they cast as Kaladin in that moment. If he can bring the necessary stuff that that character needs. Also, Kaladin swearing the second ideal at the end of the Way of Kings is Dalinar giving up Oathbringer at the end of that book. Another thing that I would really love to see, as I was telling you before we started, I just finished a reread of Wind and Truth, and Adolin telling the Unoathed to arm up.
Oh yeah, sir.
Oh my god! I'm just so excited. I mean, and then of course, Dalinar, you cannot have my pain. I mean,
oh yeah, oh yes.
I don't even know if I'll be able to watch that episode actually, but
those will be a very, very emotional. I think honestly, like I love Mistborn. Mistborn was my entry into Brandon's works, but also into epic fantasy as a whole. Like I didn't read a lot of epic fantasy growing up or sci-fi. I think I read a handful of sci-fi books. I read middle grade sci-fi fantasy books, but no like hard sci-fi. I think Ender's Game was like the most sci-fi book that I'd ever read leading up to reading Mistborn. And so Mistborn holds just such a special place in my heart for what it did for me. In like broadening my horizons, but also just blowing my freaking mind when you get to the end of the series and you're like, oh my gosh, he plotted this out from page 1 of book 1. So that's crazy. So I mean, I can't wait to see Mistborn on screen just for like what it means to me as a person, But also, like, you and I were just at Dragonsteel Nexus, and we experienced the World Hopper Ball,
Oh my
which
god.
was set at a ball in Luthadel,
Yep.
right? And that was like if you could get a glimpse into what the movies be would feel like experiencing,
Yeah.
that was it. That was it right there. And so I can't wait to see like Vin dressing up as Lady Valette
Yeah.
and going to these balls as reconnaissance and spy work that they do. And um I can't wait to see that. Um I can't wait to see Kelsier's sacrificial moment at the end of the book
Oh my god.
where he knows exactly what he's doing the whole time.
Well, and that's going to be the Ned Stark
Yeah.
beheading moment for people who have not read this series already. That
Yeah.
could be the moment where this really breaks into the broader consciousness.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because I remember watching that moment in Game of Thrones for the first
Yeah.
time, and I was like, surely Ned Stark's not going to die.
Yeah.
Surely. He's the only good character,
Yeah.
the only truly good, honorable person in this whole show. And then he dies, and you're like, well, this show,
Yeah.
nobody's safe.
Yeah,
Nobody's safe,
exactly.
right? And so that just kept everybody. I think that moment kept everybody in for so long because it was like, who else is going to hit the chopping block this season? Who else is going to not
Yep.
make it? Right.
Yep.
Obviously, Mistborn is a very different story um, than Game of Thrones. Namely, it's finished, so we can experience an ending. um, but it will be a very, very climactic to watch that happen on the screen and just be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
man, Vin, everybody did end up leaving you. I'm so sorry."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I think the moment that I'm really curious to see from Mistborn is in Hero of Ages, Vin's final confrontation with Ruin. When
Mhm,
she finally draws upon the mist. This is gonna be probably, I'm trying to think. Well, the Koloss will involve a lot of, graphics and stuff like that and CGI.
mhm.
However, I think from a battle perspective, this is where Apple is going to be able to really show off their budget here. And putting that battle with all the Inquisitors and then just flying around like a pinball basically and killing everyone, I think is going to be absolutely unbelievable.
That will be amazing. That will be so amazing. Also, I mean, this is an understated moment in book 1
Yeah.
in Final Empire. Um, but the first time I remember reading the book and being like, "I'm enjoying this," but I feel like I remember the first time being like, "Holy shit." Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say
Oh,
swear
you're
words.
fine. You're fine.
um, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" Was when Kelsier goes into the mansion of a noble and he robs their bank vault or
Yeah.
their not, he robs the vault in their house
And he
and
rips the bank
and he
vault,
just
yeah, out of
rips
the
it all
thing.
out of the wall and it's just killing all of these guards and you're like, what is happening
What?
in this scene?
Yeah.
Holy cow! Like that for me, I think that was the first like, oh my gosh, this is wild
Yeah.
what they can do with this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be like that'll be really cool to see. Just
Yeah.
not necessarily like if they adapt that one scene, but like how they're going to adapt Kelsier's brutality towards
Yeah.
the ruling class. And I feel
Yes.
like given our current political state, there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who are very interested in seeing regimes fall right now. So watching the Lord Ruler get his comeuppance is going to be really cool.
Yeah. One more interesting moment from Final Empire, I think, is the prologue. First time getting introduced to
Oh yeah.
Kelsier and seeing him just walk in, open the door, the mist kind of spilling into the room, and all. I mean, I can't off off the dome rattle off all the badass lines that he says, but essentially something is coming. Prepare yourself, basically. I think that's going to be amazing too. We could go on about this for forever. But
Yeah.
it kind of moving away from the adaptations talk, I kind of threw this in because, as I said, I just finished my reread of Wind and Truth, and it has really changed my perspective on the book. I wanted to mention that I heard that you reread the Stormlight archive every single year. Is that correct?
That is correct. Up until this year, I haven't started a reread this year.
Okay,
Uh,
well, you're gonna have to get started soon.
yes. I am. Um, I have done that pretty much since 2020, I think. Yeah,
Wow.
2021 was when I first started the full read through every year. And um yeah, it's been fun. It's honestly, the Stormlight Archive is probably my favorite book series of all time.
It's mine as well, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it's also so long that by the time I finish the most recent book, I go back and the next year I read Way of Kings again, and I'm like, oh wow, I already forgot.
It's a new book, basically.
Yeah, it is. So I just love all of these books, and I personally connect so thoroughly with Kaladin on a an emotional level of who he is as a character, of like, I will be a protector. That's kind of like who I want to be as a person, but also he struggles deeply with depression, and so do I. And when I see that on the page, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, he overcame it. And I know he's a fictional character, and I know he doesn't exist, but he exemplifies what's best about people like me, which is overcoming the struggle and
Yeah.
living through the struggle. And when you see that on the page, and you're like, man, people can do this. People can get out of this black cloud of depression. I remember as a kid, I would experience this, and it just felt like a wall
Yeah.
in my head. Like I could not get over this wall ever, and it just felt like I was up against it all the time, and I had no idea what it even was, and I had no words for it. Um, as an adult, learning what that was and hearkening back to those experiences and reading Kaladin's experience of experiencing this just crushing blackness in his mind is
Mhm.
like, wow, that's me right there. A lot of the
Yeah.
time I feel that way. And um when somebody overcomes that level of depression is so
Mhm.
inspiring to me. And so when I first read The Way of Kings, I tried starting it in, like, I think it was 2014. I tried starting The Way of Kings,
Yeah.
because I first read Mistborn in 2012, and I read through all of those, and then I read a couple of other Sanderson books, and then I picked up Way of Kings, 4 years after it came out, and I read the first 100 pages, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's still 1,000 pages to go in this book, and I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
I've got finals. Like I'm I've got my internship that I'm doing, right? Like there's so much
Mhm.
going on right now. I can't read 1,000 pages of a book right now. And so over the years, I kept trying to do that. I kept picking it up. I would read 100 pages and be like, oh yeah, I remember. We just barely got out of the prologue and the pre-prologue. So
Yeah.
uh, we're barely starting to like read about Kaladin now. Um, but once I finally finished reading that book, I was like, "This is my book. This is my book
Yeah.
for the rest of my life. I'm gonna read this every chance I get."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I read it all the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so interesting to me because I feel like everybody who has struggled with something in their life can find an ideal, an oath, or just a moment from the Stormlight Archive that resonates with them. I think for me, I'm very fortunate that I wouldn't say that depression has been something that's pervasive throughout my life, but I've certainly dealt with it throughout times. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. There was a moment where I was, I think, 24, 25, and I was taking my dog outside, and I looked up at the night sky, and I was like, huh, I guess this is just what my life is going to be, huh? Like, this is just it. And to me, that was like my honor chasm, basically. I mean, that's where you're just sitting there and you feel like there's nothing else to do. And, unfortunately, I didn't have a Sprin that came up to me with a poisonous leaf to make me kind of laugh to myself and just kind of try the next day. But it's so amazing to me how universal these stories are, and everybody can find a character or a moment that just really resonates with them.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. It's very good. I think it's going to go down probably as one of, if not the best epic fantasy series of all time. Like,
Yeah,
it's going to be up there. And obviously people are gonna have their rankings with, like, The Lord of the Rings and The
sure.
Wheel of Time. But 50 years from now, when this is a historical book, it will be up there with those.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you've read them a billion times. I want to hear your ranking of the Stormlight Archive, and I'll give you mine because it has officially been updated now that I've reread Wind and Truth. So I'll give you the floor first since you're the guest.
Okay, I'm going to start with number 5 and work my way up to my favorite one.
Great.
Okay. You want me to give reasonings, or do you just want me to just spitfire what my ranking is?
Go for it. I live in it. Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to preface this whole thing by saying I love every single book in this series.
Same. Okay,
So,
great.
Putting a book at number 5 means that there are 5 books in this series
Right.
so far.
I feel guilty when I'm ranking them, right?
One of them has to be at the bottom. So, yeah, one of them has to be at the bottom. I will this is really hard for me because I don't know what to put at number 5 and what to put at number 4.
Mm.
I go back and forth often between Rhythm of War and Wind and Truth at the bottom.
Okay.
So right now I'm probably going to say Wind and Truth,
Okay.
Rhythm of War.
Okay.
Then I will say Oathbringer
Okay.
at number 3. I will say The Way of Kings at number 2.
Okay.
And Words of Radiance at number 1.
Okay. So before I reread Wind and Truth, and I have a little bit of a confession to make because I had to finish Wind and Truth before Dragonsteel this year. And so I listened to it on Audible at an ungodly speed. Like it was
yeah.
It was bad. It was bad. And so I was speaking on a panel about it and I was like, "Oh my god, there is stuff that is being said right now that I do not remember at all." And so and also the thing with Wind and Truth was weird because I spent a year basically hearing why everybody hated it.
Yeah, I did too.
And I was just like, go ahead, sorry.
I just disagree with so much of what people talk about in this, why they hate this book.
Yeah, and I'll get into that when I do my ranking. But it's just like I felt like I was in this weird space where I was like anticipating problems with the story. And so finishing it, I had it at the bottom. Now my ranking would be Rhythm of War at the bottom. Oathbringer number 4. And I say this knowing that Oathbringer has my favorite Sanderson of all time. However, the rest of the book in its totality didn't quite work for me on the level that the other Stormlight books worked. I'm going to put Wind and Truth at 3, Way of Kings at 2, Words of Radiance at 1. Words of Radiance is a perfect book in my mind.
I agree.
I mean, the way that Sanderson was able to make a 1,200 plus page book perfectly paced, is unbelievable to me. The Kaladin swearing the third ideal in the face of Moash and then going straight into the battle with Zeth, like Sanderson has never cooked like he cooked in that moment. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I absolutely love Words of Radiance so much. But to go back to Wind and Truth, I have some theories as to why people had a poor reaction to it. This obviously, okay, cool. So this is not. This is a broad statement that is not everybody, but generalizing. I feel as though there were a lot of people who Wind and Truth was their first Stormlight Archive book that they were waiting for. They got on the train and were able to read all 4 books and were waiting for Wind and Truth. I think that amped up expectations. Number 2, I think that days 1 through 2 bothered some people because I can see how some people might have seen some of the like word choices or the ways in which Brandon described how people were interacting with their struggles and things in a little bit more plainly, as opposed to where a lot of what he did in the first 4 books was showing, as opposed to like really spelling it out clearly for people. I think people thought it was a little too, maybe thought it was a little too on the nose. And so I think people maybe started the book and didn't like how the first couple of days went, and then that made them disregard how unbelievably strong the second half of that book is.
Yeah, it is.
And number 3, I think that a lot of people forgot that this is the 5th book in a 10 book series.
Yeah.
I think they were expecting a lot of resolution where that just simply was not going to happen.
I think that's one of the big things. If you look at like ratings online with Goodreads and Amazon, you look at all 5 books and they're all at like 4.2 or above.
Yeah.
So it's not like people hate this book.
Yeah.
Right? When people talk about what they don't like about Wind and Truth, it's a minority of people, right?
Yeah.
The vast majority of people who read that book gave it a 5-star. So that's something that I think people forget about, is that like, a lot of people enjoyed this book. So just deal with that. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, but then yes, a lot of people were expecting this to be like a conclusion to a series, and it was a conclusion to some people's storylines, but it wasn't to some others. And like I remember I talked with Brandon when Wind and Truth came out. I interviewed him at Dragonsteel Nexus, not last year, but 2 years ago.
Okay.
And he told me that the ending with Dalinar was one of the first scenes that he ever wrote for Stormlight Archive.
Wow.
One of the first things that he ever envisioned, one of the first things that he ever wrote for Stormlight Archive. And he wrote various versions of this over time. And it ultimately landed on what we have now in Wind and Truth.
Yep.
But he's been planning that scene, that moment with Dalinar specifically, for a long time. A long time. And yeah, I honestly like the ending, the last half of that book is so strong. It is so strong. And I don't know, like it's so hard to rate these books on a rankings tier, because I love parts of all of them. But out of all of them, only one of them really stands out as the perfect book, and that is Words of Radiance.
Yeah.
So that's going to take number 1 every time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it is really hard for me to pick Words of Radiance over Way of Kings. It is really hard for me to do that, because Way of Kings is also just an exceptionally written book. It is so good. It is so good. And for some people, they have it at their number 1 purely for the fact that it kicks off an amazing series.
Yeah.
And that is valid.
Yeah.
But I love Words of Radiance so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you looking forward to most moving into this second arc of the Stormlight Archive?
I am looking forward to seeing how all of the Cosmere worlds are going to collide, because we've gotten so many different worlds so far. We've gotten Roshar, we've gotten Scadrial, and I'm going to not remember any of the other names right now because I'm in the middle of a podcast. And I'm sure the diehard Cosmere fans are going to be like, he's not even a Cosmere fan. He can't name any other worlds. Anyway, we've gotten so many other worlds. With Tress, with Yumi, with Warbreaker, with Elantris. One of my favorite Sanderson books ever is oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank on the name now.
Emperor Soul.
Emperor Soul, that he won the Hero Award for.
Yes.
That I haven't read it in probably 10 years, but when I did read it, that book was transformative for me. It was so good. So there are just so many worlds here that now that we have Retribution, who is the biggest threat the Cosmere has seen pretty much ever, taking over we are going to see a clash of worlds, I'm expecting, like we haven't seen before. We've seen some lead up to it
Mhm.
with the Ghost Bloods, and with Thydakar,
Yeah.
who is obviously Kelsier.
Uh-huh.
Um, spoilers, everybody. We gave you the
Wait,
warning.
what?
Yeah. We've got some hints that this is coming.
Yeah.
That obviously Kelsier's number one goal is to protect the people of Scadrial. That's
Mhm.
his number one goal, right? And so, yeah, he does what he does. And there's going to be a clash between Scadrial and Roshar, and we're going to see how that plays out. That's going to be extremely interesting. We've also had books like The Sunlit Man, which are very clearly at some point in the future.
Yeah.
And we see what happens in the future to certain Knights Radiant and their Spren.
Mhm.
So how does that happen? How did
Yeah.
that happen? Right?
Yeah.
What took place in order for that to have happened? So I'm excited to see the exploration of these worlds colliding, and the shards really coming into the focal point of books 6 through 10.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have one more question before I let you go. What is your personal favorite ideal among the Knights Radiant?
This is a very tough question for me. Very tough question for me because, like I mentioned before, I struggle with depression a lot.
Yeah.
My family has a history of depression. My family also has a history of suicide, which I'm happy to talk about on this show. No problem. And so when we were at Dragonsteel Nexus last year and Brandon launched this coin, the Next Step coin, I was incapable of holding myself together in that moment, and I was crying so hard because it meant so much to me. It meant so much to me that somebody that I look up to so much cared enough.
Mhm.
Cared enough to put something together to say, "Hey, you are still wanted here. You are still wanted here." And yeah, it's a hard thing to talk about, with when you know somebody who's taken their own life.
Mhm.
And when that person was close to you. And when he came out with that coin, I was so overwhelmed with gratitude that somebody was willing to talk about that at such a big in such a big stage.
Mhm.
And so when it comes to the ideals that are my favorite, my personal favorite ideal, I would probably say I will protect those who cannot protect themselves.
Yeah.
Is That's a big one for me. I will
Mhm.
protect those who cannot protect themselves. But I will also say that life before death
Mhm.
is a huge one for me. I'm sorry to cry on your show.
No, it's amazing.
Um,
You're
this is like real world stuff for me. And
yeah.
honestly, I can like the one of the reasons why I love this series so much is because of how human it is, because of
Mhm.
how real these oaths are and what these characters stand for. So I have never had any suicidal ideation in my life. I've struggled with immense depression, but I've never had that.
Mhm.
But my family members have. I'm not going to name any of them, but when you know somebody who goes through that, you want to do whatever you can to protect them. You want to do
Mhm.
whatever you can to tell them that you love them and that they are wanted here. And so I bought some of these coins for myself and for my family to show them, like, hey, we bond over the Stormlight Archive. We bond over the Cosmere. We love talking about this together. This is one
Mhm.
of our favorite things. Here's this coin, and I want you to keep it with you so that you know that I want you here. Um, so life before death,
Yeah.
every day of the week, life before
Yeah.
death. And then a close second is, oh, protect those who cannot protect themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's amazing to hear you talk about it, and I've just been so struck by you since I met you, and it's kind of funny during that presentation that Brandon was making. I was sitting next to you and Lauren,
Mhm.
and I noticed that you were getting emotional, and it's just like it's just it's really special to be able to be a part of a community and to love something so much like we love these books, and then to get to see how that has affected people that we grow to become friends with. And so I'm just really thankful for the time that we got to spend together at Dragonsteel, and then hopefully the time that we get to spend together next year as well.
Yeah.
And I will share this personally, for me, like my favorite ideal, and I mentioned um, the story that I shared earlier, but for me, I've just always been really struck by Dalinar saying, "If I must fall, I will rise each time a better man." I mean, it is, you go through life and you fuck up, and there are things you do that you wish you hadn't done, and there are people say things to you and people do things to you, and the most important step is always the next one. And so, um, I love these books so much. They're such a beacon, especially in today's world where it's just there's is going right. Um, but at the end of the day, I can get on a call with you and I can talk about these books, and we can share a human moment together, and it can remind us that, we're all just kind of here together at the end of the day.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. It's all so powerful. It is. And like I said before, this is all fiction. It's
Hmm.
all stuff that is made up, but the best stories are the ones that we see ourselves in. And the
Hmm.
best stories are the ones that not only do we see ourselves in them, we see how we can become
Yeah.
better by exemplifying what we see in those stories. And I think that's Stormlight Archive to a T. That's what it is all about. Um, so yeah, I love that. If I must fall, I shall rise each time. And that is a great oath to take. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so by the way, since we talked about the next step coins, I'm also going to leave a link in the description to that page where I'm not sure if are they still selling them right now. I haven't checked in a while.
you can get one for free, by the way. If
Yeah,
you
you
are
can.
somebody who's
Yeah,
struggling with depression or struggling with suicidal ideation, you can go online. You can go to that link. They will send you one for free. And
yeah,
I think that's even just that is that is it right there. That is the
yeah,
point is go grab one.
yeah.
Don't feel like you need to buy it. They're going to send it to you.
Yeah, and for any folks who maybe don't struggle with those things but want to contribute to helping people who do, there is also the option to purchase as well, if that's something that you feel inclined to do. Well, I think we have both learned that we could be here for far much longer discussing the Stormlight Archive, but at some point, I got to let you get back to your kids. So, Ben, thank you so much for being here. Could you please take a moment real quick to let everyone know where they can find you and all the awesome work that you and your wife Lauren do every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, as Hayden mentioned at the beginning of this show, we run a business called Books on the Grange. That is a book development business. I'm a developmental editor. My wife is a copy editor. We kind of help people with their whole package, with developing their books. So, if that is you and you need some help with your book, you can find us on Instagram at Books on the Grange. You can go to our website at booksonthegrange.com. We also run a free global writing challenge that Hayden mentioned, which is 3030. That is 3030k.com, THIRTY30k.com. And that is a global writing challenge. We built it last year when NaNoWriMo fell apart. And we've gotten thousands of writers from all over the world to join. I think in over 70 countries, people are accessing our website and creating accounts, engaging with each other, helping each other stay motivated to write their books all year long. We run four main month-long writing challenges where the goal is to write 30,000 words in 30 days. And if you're a writer, the best thing that you can do is find a community and help yourself stay motivated through the whole process. Continuity and and motivation are the two main keys to writing your book. So go to 3030k.com, sign up for an account, and join us in our writing challenges.
That's awesome. And also, I don't want to embarrass you, but I just want to say, I think you are living out the ideal of protecting those who cannot protect themselves in a little bit of a different way with 3030, because you are empowering people to make their dreams come true. And I just think it's really amazing that you guys are contributing to this wonderful community. And I really hope that everybody checks it out if they get the chance.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you saying that so much. It is free. It will always be free. Everything we do with 3030 will be free for everyone for all time. So
I do
you
not
can
know the
access it
last
whenever
time
you
I
want.
heard that phrase before in my life. Everything will be free for the rest of time. So thank you guys so much for listening to the episode. That is it for us today. Be sure to tune into episode 1 of our Well of Ascension deep dive starting this coming Wednesday, February 4th. It is going to be an absolute blast. Okay. Talk to you all soon. Thanks so much. Bye.